to the critics, my words are like physics, a force that they can't stop. They just don't get it, I think they forget I'm not done till I'm on top. I know I was born for this. I know I was born for this. I believe we can write our story.
All right, good afternoon, everybody, especially on LinkedIn. We're currently live streaming on our Words from the Wise LinkedIn profile. We're going to be talking today. One of our first speakers from Ocala Inspired is actually going to be with us. It's super exciting because Ocala Inspired is something that we've been planning now for, it feels like months, but we're almost there. It's July 25th. We're going to have a live leadership development event in Ocala, full of leaders from Ocala. If you have not yet gotten your ticket and you want to come join us, there's going to be links in the description. Of course, there's links in the Ocala Inspired event page on LinkedIn. We're going to be sending the tickets out. We're going to be sending the links out. There's only so many seats, so please let us know you want to come because we're looking to provide lunch there for people that are coming to hear the live speakers present. And over the next few days, I'm going to have every one of the presenters meet with me, and we're going to be talking about what they're going to be discussing at Ocala Inspired and why there's value in you coming in person to meet with other people in our community that are not just interested in leadership, but are leading. They're leading in right now, leading people, and they're going to be helping you not only improve your leadership skills, but hopefully also building a team of people that want to do it together. Hopefully everybody knows by now, I'm Gary Wise, Wise Leadership Solutions, also Vanguard High School Navy Junior ROTC instructor, retired Navy Master Chief, person who's super involved in leadership. And today's guest is going to be none other than Mr. Elgin Kerlock. Mr. Kerlock is coming to us from Review Business Strategies here in Ocala. He has his hand in a bunch of different business jars here in Ocala. And of course, he's involved in the community. He's involved with the churches. He's involved in real estate and leadership development. And he's going to be talking to us today about how to take data and how to best use it to make decisions and strategies going forward. So without further ado, let me welcome Mr. Kerlock to the stage. 3, 2, 1. Magic. Hey, what's up, Mr. Kerlock?
How you doing today? Good to see you. Thanks for having me on.
It's good to see you too, man. It is great. It is an honor to have you on today. And just so you know, we're live streaming. Don't know if anybody's going to watch. They might not. They might watch it later. But we're also going to use this to help spread the word for Ocala Inspired, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so the first question I'm going to ask you, Mr. Kerlock, is, you know, how can people, businesses, leaders best use data to project going forward?
Sure. You know, what's interesting is when you think about it, you already do that in regular practice, right? I mean, you if you want to go see a particular movie, you know what theater to go to that the people talk too much. You go to ones, you know which ones to go to that the popcorn's always stale, you know. So you use that previous data to make your decision. But for some odd reason, we don't do the same thing when it comes to business. We come up with an idea for a product or service, and then we go out and try to convince people to use it. Whereas if we did it from the data driven, it would be a question that we would pose would be, hey, what is it that my target audience is looking for? And how am I able to now produce that? And what you'll find is that the best products and the best services are driven by the people who use them. And so you go and get as much data as you possibly can to be able to make sure that you're going to exceed their expectation. Because for most people, excuse me, for most people, there's a 2.3 multiplier. So if I spend $100, I expect to get $230 worth of value. But if I don't know anything about you, if I don't know any data on your demographics, on your preferences, your consumer behavior, your purchasing behavior, how in the world can I offer you what it is you need?
Yeah, that's a fact. And I think what people don't really think about They don't think to record what's happening so they can look back at where they've been so they can project where they're going. And what you're saying, I mean, to us, to you and I, just makes perfect sense, right? But again, that's our experience. And what I think we're going to find when we have people that come to Ocala inspired, they're hopefully open to finding better ideas to find improvement. And what's fun is it's kind of also, are you already been there? Just look back at your life, look what's worked for you in the past, and then use that information to help discover where you're going to go forward, right? And I'm looking forward because I know that Ocala Inspired, you're going to be giving them tools to best collect data, which I think is one of the areas a lot of people struggle is they don't understand. First, they don't understand typically what data is. Like you talked about the popcorn, that's an indicator, right, as to whether or not it's a good movie, right? Is the popcorn running out, or are they not selling the popcorn, right? And then I think it's also going to be, are they meeting their expectations for sales or whatnot in life? And why do you think us having an event like Ocala Inspired is a good idea?
Well, a couple of reasons. One, if nothing else, I hope they leave with a clear understanding of the difference between a leader and a manager. There are a lot of managers that think they're leaders. Okay. Right. And hopefully, if nothing else, it will be a very, very clear delineation. And if I gave a simple definition, it simply would be your leader, as a leader, your sole responsibility is your team. It's not your company. It's not your stockholders. It's not your revenue. It's your team, because they're the ones who facilitate all of the above. Right. And if you're not using data, even data from them, when's the last time you asked your team if they had all of the tools necessary to accomplish what it is you expect of them? Or do you just yell when they don't?
Or ask them that question and actually wanted the answer, right? It wasn't like you were just saying it because it sounds good or saying it because it's cliche. But if you're the leader, or if you're the owner, the CEO, or if you have an investment in the success, you need to know where to invest your energy and your time. And in my opinion, the best place for a leader to invest their time is in their followers, in their people. Because we had this conversation the other day, but I'll clue in the rest of the world. It's the people that are you're leading are probably the ones that are going to be making a lot of the magic happen, right? You can't do it all yourself. There's just no way any of us can do everything we need to do to find success ourselves. So taking the time to feed into them is critical. I think on the reverse, the leaders are very important, right? They have got to appreciate their value as well, right? Not everybody is going to be that leader. If you're the one that has that opportunity that day, congratulations, you're in the game, man. Like, you got the rock, you got the opportunity. So why is it important that a leader invest in themselves and in their own, I would say, development?
Sure. Well, I mean, back to the word data, right? And so the most important data is going to be on you, because how do you know when you are visioning, when you're trying to decide where your company is going to be in the next 12 to 18 months, how do you know how to build that team? Well, that team has to be compatible with what your experience is, what your temperament is, what your expectations are. Right. And if you don't know that, you need to start collecting data on you. Go ahead and do a personality profile. There's plenty of free ones out there. And so you get that. And here's a fun game for you. Get it. Do a write-up on yourself, whether you agree or disagree with certain aspects. Then give it to the closest person to you with no filter and ask them, do you agree or disagree? Yeah. I promise you will be surprised how other people perceive you.
Yeah, that's a self-inflicted 360 assessment, right? Like,
that's right.
And so for those of you again that don't know, a 360 assessment is where you essentially are asking people around you at a peer side, maybe somebody that you're serving directly underneath, maybe somebody that you're actually directly responsible for leading. You're getting feedback from all these different areas. But to Elgin's point, You want someone who's going to give you that candid feedback, that honest feedback, that authentic feedback, right? And
Mhm.
people sometimes don't want to give that feedback because they're afraid to hurt someone's feelings
Yeah.
or they're afraid to jeopardize a relationship. And so, what he's telling you, what his advice is take this assessment and then ask someone else that you really trust to give you their feedback on that assessment. You know what's funny about that is I never took a test until like the Myers Briggs type indicator until I was a master chief in the Navy. So I was already responsible for leading so many people. And I remember thinking, why did I not ever get exposed to this? God, 15 years previously, it would have been such a game changer. And then when I went to my first ship as a master chief, I made sure my whole mess got those. And now my students at Vanguard, I'm having them take online
Good.
MBTI type indicators,
Yeah.
and then we have the conversation. Do you see yourself as an extrovert or an introvert or as a sensory person or an intuitive person or a thinker or feeler? And it's just like you said, self-awareness, right? And
Yeah.
leaders,
Yeah.
you cannot control your leadership style. I know you want to, you just can't. You
That's
can't
right.
control how people perceive you, right?
That's right.
Um, Elgin, how did you get to be who you are today? Like, what was it about your journey that got you to be, not just this great businessman, but also a leader of humans in our world?
So, I grew up in a household where my mom said, if you are willing to do the work, you can be anything that you wanted to be. And
Right.
and I was foolish enough to believe her, right? So the downside to it all is that I don't have a specialty, right? The
Mm.
upside to it all is that I'm really good at a lot of stuff. Because she said, "Hey, if that interests you, go find out about it." And and
Yeah.
and so I would go and spend hours, in the library reading about how to fix an intake manifold on a 302 Chevy engine, and then go
Mm.
do it,
Right.
right? And so my whole life has been built around learning things, but as you get older, what you understand is that it's the relationship with people. And then
Right.
I started to really take heart as the interactions between people, and what makes it go the way that you hope that it would go, and what makes it not,
Right.
and what are the personality types that I find that I mix well with. And so as I began to carry that into business, you begin to realize that there's probably only 5 or 6 personalities, no matter what packaging they come in, whether it's male, female, whatever ethnicity. It's still going to be one of 4 or 5, 5 or 6 personalities. And once I understand which I'm dealing with, then I can easily move into the posture that's going to make it go more positive. And
Right.
so that's still data driven if you think about it, right? Because
Definitely.
it's the assembling of the samples of interactions with people over whatever period of time that caused the technique now that I use once I identify who I'm talking to.
Right. Well, and I think that understanding that you're the kind of person that helps get the best out of people, that
Mhm.
to me is the gift of the best leaders, right? I remember coming up through my journey, I would teach people um, how to manage and how to lead. And they're different flavors for different types, different things. And usually they would almost always work for me. And so I would need them to be certain things at certain times. I need you to manage this problem. I need you to lead these people, right? I need you to know these things. And part of that journey is learning how to understand the person so you
Mhm.
can best realize how to leverage them so they can find success, because once they find the success that they're looking for inherently is in tune with what you're looking for, then
Yep.
they're going to want to follow you more and they're going to want to continue to work with you because they're like, man, this is exactly where I want to be.
Yep.
This is exactly the things I want to do. And it just so happens I'm validated because they keep telling me good job. They keep giving me more opportunity. They start giving me even more money, more benefits, more time, more whatever. And I think that's one of the things that people should look to learn as they grow in their leadership space is how to best not read your people, listen to your people, understand
Sure.
your people, and
Sure.
find what they're looking for, right?
Well,
Elgin, I know you're busy all the time. You know, what does a typical day look like for you in your space?
sure. Usually the mornings is when I do most of my writing because
Okay.
the brain hasn't kicked in yet, right? So pre coffee,
Okay.
if I get up at 5:30, then I'll probably write till about 7:30 or so because my head hasn't started the day and people aren't pinging my phone yet. and
Right.
and so that gives me the clear space, and it's when I do my podcast, right? And so that gives
Okay.
me the clear space to have unfiltered thought. And then probably for the next 4 hours, it's really aligning, finding out what my mentees are, my clients are, colleagues like yourself. What are we working on, and
Right.
what do I need to get accomplished just today? And that's what I think the biggest thing. If we well, maybe the second biggest thing that comes out of the Ocala Inspire is to understand that you have to own your clock to be a good
Mm,
leader, because this life is full of distractions.
yeah.
And so if you're not using a system that allows you to adapt to the interruptions but still get what your day is supposed to accomplish
Yeah.
today, and don't worry about tomorrow, because there is no such thing, that we're in Wednesday right now. When we get to Thursday, it ain't going to be tomorrow, it's going to be today. It's
Yeah.
only today.
Definitely.
That's all that you live in. And so your responsibility is to make sure that from the time you open your eyes until you close them back again, that you got the most
Mm,
productivity out of the day based on the data that you have and that what you have learned during the course of that day. Okay,
right.
because the Gary that got out of bed this morning is not the Gary that will get back in that bed this evening. And so
Right.
what did Gary learn? And that's and we're going to talk about journaling too, doing the Ocala Inspired and doing my time, because it's very important to write it down and make it plain.
Yeah. And I think that, that's what I like about video. That's what I like about recording things and kind of getting out there and just hopefully preserving some things for posterity, because my family growing up, my mom and dad they journaled, right? And I remember when my dad was passing away, I was finally able to kind of read through his journal and kind of look at some of his thoughts and kind of read through them. And I actually got the chance to talk with him a little bit about it, and I had never had that awareness. But I will tell you, I regretted not having journaled all of the years that I had been alive, right? And even to this day, I'm not making that a priority, but by doing the video stuff and by getting online and sharing my thoughts, at a minimum, it may be available to my children someday in the
Yep.
future for them to possibly hear it. I do want to circle back real fast on your podcast, because
Sure.
Elgin has his podcast, and if y'all hear his voice, he sounds like a smooth man. That voice is smooth, right? And Elgin, he unpacks the Bible for us. What he does is he is that correct? Is that a correct assessment of your podcast? You share with us
Absolutely.
the word, and then you give us an understanding of that. So, if you could, for a few minutes, could you tell us a little bit about your podcast?
Sure. It's called The Bible Speaks.
Mm,
And the idea was simply to take things that we've heard before or have had, the pleasure of hearing in maybe in a sermon, but didn't really have an opportunity to ask questions.
yeah,
Because most pastors do a phenomenal job of getting you motivated on Sunday, but unfortunately, Sunday ain't enough. Right?
yeah,
You need something to carry you through the week, and so
right,
we do it 6 days a week, and they're very short. They usually range from 5 minutes to maybe 15 minutes, but it'll usually be dealing with something that you've already heard. And so
right,
the idea is to give you to let you understand that it's a living and breathing document, right? It addresses every single thing that you deal with in 2025, even though it was written more than 2,000 years ago. And so by positioning it so that they can see how that it will give you more understanding the more you read it, right? So the more you understand, the more you'll see. And so my goal is to just give you another perspective so that when you go back and read that same chapter again, you're going to be like, wow, Well, based on what I heard today, is this true? And so,
Right.
our God is a God of knowledge. He wants you to ask questions, just like what we're doing right here and sharing knowledge is to, I firmly believe we have just two purposes for being on earth, and that's to please God and serve people. And so as we are serving people, we're writing things down, we're making it plain, we're writing lessons, we're doing workbooks, and then that allows more people to be able to share. Because now I'm maybe I said something on the podcast that pricked your curiosity, and you went and studied the book of First Thessalonians, and then someone comes right behind you and asks you a question or something you just studied, right? So we get to push that knowledge forward. And I think as leaders, that's equally as important, right? That we push knowledge forward.
Yeah. It almost always feels like like I got a check in the block when I learn something at church on Sunday, or I get something out of a conversation with someone, and then I'm able to use it somewhere else to provide value to somebody else. Yep. I almost always feel like, there you go, Gary. Like there you go. And so that resonates with me so much. And just so I'd catch that again, you said, serve other people. And what was that first one again?
Please God.
Please God. People. There you go. Please God and serve other people.
Yep. And whether you're a believer or not, if you just did those two things, the quality of your life would go up immeasurably.
I agree. And I think that people in any space need to have, especially leaders of people, need to have faith in something. They've got to have faith in something. Otherwise, there's an area between Gary today and Gary tomorrow, right? Elgin today and Elgin tomorrow. There's this gap that you're like, but can we get the job done? Can we get the thing done? I'm projecting into the future all these things that we believe in. But the thing is, like you said, it's kind of a facade, because there's no way you're going to ever know it's going to work out. And you've got to have that faith in something to carry you, to keep the momentum going and the work going, or you're going to possibly, quit and not make it there, because you're not going to find the reasons. And then, oh, by the way, it's going to get hard, right? Because the enemy gets a vote. The enemy, one of the most strategic things I would ever do for my bosses, and in my career as a master chief, part of my role to my boss to serve them was to play devil's advocate, right? My job was to say, everybody in this room is talking like we're all just going to have no problems, but that's not how things go, right? Where's the food coming from? Where's the bathrooms going to be located? And where are the injured and the dead going to go? Because if we don't plan for those things right there, we're going to probably plan to fail. And that's it. And the level of the things that I was doing, that was unfortunately some of the left and right parameters, right? Well, it's not always that crazy in the world today, but you still have got to play, okay, worst case scenario to best case scenario. How can we plan for those? So, Elgin, in your life, do you have any times that you can remember where it was like you took a loss, right? Where that really resonated with you and you're like, okay, that data that showed me that loss was coming, I failed to collect it, and I'm never going to make that mistake again. And that was one of the turning points in your life where you're not going to let that happen in the future. And if you do have one of those times, would you be willing to share it with us?
Oh, sure. I mean, I have, lots of those. Okay. But it's because as an entrepreneur by nature, I'm a risk taker. Okay. I'm a risk taker. And so there are times where, at 80% you go, as opposed to waiting till 100% and being able to make better decisions on better information, right? Because you're so passionate about what you're going to do. But I had a scenario a few years back where a gentleman came to our firm and we were trying to raise capital for a project, and he promised us, hey, we can raise $1 million for you, and it's only going to cost you, 5 figures. And so we're like, okay. So I had my friend who worked for NSA do a full background search on this guy, right? I can tell you where his mama lived, where his daughters live, right? And so came back clean as a whistle. And so we invested the money, and he ripped us off, pretty good, right? Like I said, in 5 figures. Okay. He was, and so nothing he did was illegal, but it certainly was unethical, right? And so what I learned in that scenario is that generally, as your mom used to tell you, that if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And even if you research it and it passed the smell test, what did your gut say?
Yeah.
What did your gut say? Right?
Yeah.
The fact that I'm going to give you 5 figures and you're going to give me 7. Does that really sit well? And as I said, so the interesting part about human nature is that when you decide that you want something, you can justify anything.
Right.
Right. And so part of that now is if I were doing it from the data analysis point of view, not only would he have had to pass the background check, but I should have talked to at least 3 people that he's gotten this done for, and did the type of deals, but once again, since I wanted it to happen, I kind of took 80% of it and figured that 80% checked out. Let's do that. And then that 20%, I lost 20 grand.
Man, but you know what though? Number one, that's a great story. I appreciate the share. That shows, I appreciate that it shows people that we can all take a loss.
Sure.
But number two, it hasn't stopped you from making moves and taking a risk, right?
Right. It has not.
And what's funny is when you said that 80% number, I tell people that all the time, right? I really just need 80% of my thought thinking that we're going to be able to get it there. And I've just got so much faith and belief in my God, in my systems, in my people, in myself, that I'm going to get across that damn 30, 40% and more I need. Now, if you notice, my math ain't mathing, right? I said 80 and I added 30, 40 more because, brother, I'm bringing extra because I always expect there to be some nicks or whatnot in the plans at the end. But I just appreciate getting help to get 80% of the way there because I'm used to starting off at -5, right? And being a person who either is an entrepreneur or just somebody who has had to come throughout a life of struggle, which everybody struggles, right? I don't believe there's anyone in this world, even Jesus had to go out in the desert and be tempted, right? You are born through, you are the prophecy, you are the savior of the world, and you had to go through struggles, right? So there's no such thing as a person who's not having to struggle. But we don't all know each other's struggle, right? But when you take that loss, don't let that be the reason why you fail to try again tomorrow, because that's nothing. What's it? Les Brown, as he talks about having the ghosts stand around you at the end of your life, and they're the dreams and they're the opportunities that you failed to capitalize on because you were afraid to try again. And I would rather have people on my team that have failed and got back on the horse and rode again than people who are afraid to get off the couch and go try.
So let me give it to you this way.
Right.
Think about it this way. There's no such thing as failure, right? Because when you endeavor to anything in your life, only one of 2 things happen. It either goes the way that you expected or you learn something. That's all that happens. There is no failure. You're just going to learn something. Now, that learning something could cost you an eye, could cost you a leg, sometimes cost you your life, okay? But understand that's the only 2 things that happen. It either comes out the way you want or you learn something.
Well, and I remember once upon a time I was on board the USS George Washington, and my job was to be essentially the head firefighter for the carrier, right? And we had this big inspection on the whole ship. My sailors have been working their butts off. We've been trying so hard for so long to be ready. And we were doing this one part of the inspection, and some stuff came out that I had no awareness to. And we didn't do bad, but we didn't do as good as we could have done. And me and my chief engineer are walking down the P-way, and he's angry, right? He's frustrated, and I'm laughing. He's like, "Say your chief, what the heck are you laughing at?" I was like, because I just learned some stuff that I had no idea about. But
Yeah.
now that I know this, oh my, it's a game changer. And he couldn't do nothing with me. He was so annoyed with me at that moment because I'm laughing because he's you too worried about what's already that water. We're not going backwards, sir.
That's
We
right.
can't go backwards. It's done. All we can do is go forward and be excited about the future, right? Okay, so talking about the future, how do you see Ocala in particular growing or evolving next 5 to 10 years?
So what I hope to see is that people like me and you are helping steward these younger entrepreneurs coming up on how to help Ocala position the growth, right? So we're in a really big growth spurt, and it'll probably go on for another 5 years or so. And so, but what's going on is that we're not considering infrastructure. So if you're not from a big city, then you wouldn't think about it, right? And
Right.
so let me give you an example. The way that you know that you're in a small town is that on the weekends, everything's closed. Whereas when you're in a large town on the weekends, everything's open because they know everybody else is off.
Right.
Okay. Where in the small town, you want to close so that you can be with your family. And that's fine. But as Ocala begins to expand into an international city where we're bringing people from all around the world, there's certain things that we don't have. We don't have certain types of restaurants. We don't have certain types of entertainment. We don't have certain types of hotels. And so it's up to the entrepreneur and, to provide those things. I mean, yes, the municipalities will help, but it's always going to be private money that does that. And so, I would hope through Ocala Inspired and other things that you and I will do together, right, and with others, that we begin to open people's eyes to the opportunities that are here. So I'll give you an example. Over there where I live, they have approved 2,000 additional housing units, right? So they're going to be 2,000 more houses.
Wow.
But in my area, there is one dry cleaner. There is one daycare. There's no place to shoot a game of pool. There's no place to get a Slurpee. Okay, I mean, you see what I'm saying? So entrepreneurs have the opportunity to steer how our city grows by taking advantage of the opportunities that their data is showing them, right? So if we know a place like the World Equestrian Center is going to attract 300,000 people per year, you have to ask yourself, okay, when they're not on the horse, what are they doing? And let's go look at the research. And what does the research say? Like, for example, statistically, a horse owner has 2 dogs for every horse. So does it make sense for us to build a dog park? Because if they're coming with the horses, they're probably coming with the dogs. And so you see what I mean? So that's what I see. I see that there is our county is ripe for growth and that, but we need people who understand not only leadership, but how to develop businesses, run businesses, and serve people.
Well, and how to synergize it all, right? How to thread it all together, because the pastor of my church was talking this last Sunday. He said there's 250 people moving to Ocala, plus or minus a number weekly.
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, the state of Florida is just booming because so many people are moving here for whatever their reasons are, right? You can just, for whatever their reasons are, doesn't really matter to me. They're just coming. And my thing is, I don't think that when people think of a city that's growing, they're going to see a stereotypical grow in Ocala, because technology is going to be leveraged at the highest levels.
That's right.
And I don't believe you're going to see a bunch of buildings, skyscrapers going vertical, because again, 9/11 taught me I don't want to be on the 30th floor of some building if there's a fire or a problem. I want to be where I can get out of there quickly. But with technology, we can leverage a bunch of different tools and we can still have that growth. And what I can tell you from the people that I speak with and the things that I hear is we are going to be a population that's going to rival some of these bigger cities. But you're not going to maybe know it until it's too late. And then, like you said, the infrastructure is not keeping up. people are going to start to get frustrated. And then you're going to have people that are either A, moving where the infrastructure is where they want it, or B, hopefully doing something about it. And my goal is to be part of B, because as entrepreneurs, I want to help make the situation better. I want to help feed into the community and into our town. So that way, as the new guests come or our new neighbors show up, we can be welcoming and appreciate them for what they're bringing to the table, and not resenting that there's not enough for everyone at the table to eat, because I believe that there is enough room at the table for everyone to eat. We just got to all make sure we're cooking up the right stuff. And then also, and this is something I'm passionate about as a high school teacher, I don't want our children that are growing up here to not be prepared to compete with the people that are coming from all these other areas that are already up to speed with technology and leveraging it, because there's other areas possibly already doing it, right? I think that if the pandemic showed me anything, it showed me how I can multiply a lot of different things with these electronic tools. And I see the good in having synergy with people that I can get around in the same room with quickly, right? I think there's synergy there, so we can all be together, but we also don't all need to work in the big same building every day. I think there's a balance there as we go forward. And I think Ocala Inspired in particular, why this is such a big deal for me is people have this, when I meet people and I ask them about these topics, they give me these answers of, well, I got to go to Jacksonville, or I got to go to Tampa, or I got to go to Orlando. But there's a lot of people in Ocala that are doing really, really good.
That's right.
And they're just not telling everybody what's going on. And we could start to invest on our own area to help be a part of the rise by just watching it happen around you and then wondering, like, why is this going up? Why is this happening? But then not knowing, why behind what's going on. You go to Ocala Inspired, you might meet somebody that can tell you that answer.
So the other thing that I like that Ocala Inspired symbolizes is collaboration, right? So the speakers that you have are very well schooled in their own discipline, but coming together to uniformly present something is always a better scenario, right? I mean, when I lived in Atlanta, one of the organizations that I belonged to was called the Concierge Society. And Atlanta is probably the 6th or 7th largest convention town. Right. And they do so much revenue there that all of the concierge at all of the hotels got together and realized it's more about the customer experience in our city than it is about my hotel or your hotel. Definitely. So they all got together, and it was amazing, because you would see times where one would call another, one hotel would call the other, says, listen, man, I need to put 35 people on the same floor. What do you have? And he says, oh, yeah, I've got that. He says, okay, I gave them this rate. Would you match that? Yeah. Okay, buddy, I'll send them right over.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? I mean, that was one of the most enlightened organizations I had ever seen. But at the same time, our convention business was through the roof, because the level of service that they were getting is because they were having workshops amongst the concierge, and they started teaching each other how to give great service, how to find the hard things that they're asking you to find. And then, you know what you saw? You saw the restaurant owners in town going, well, wait, I need to make sure that all you guys have eaten here, so that when people ask you where to get the best steak, you know where to send them. And so that's exactly what started to happen. So whenever a convention came to town, there was this uniform, whether they went into a restaurant or it was a banner hanging on the street, or anything like that the level of collectivism just increased the experience that the person had, and the likelihood that convention would come back. And so as you look at a city like ours, as we begin to grow, if we as leaders and entrepreneurs and business owners began to work together so that the user experience of our city was at a high level, that word gets out, more people come, right? More opportunities for entrepreneurs, more opportunities for people seeking jobs, more growth, more tax base. and that way we can grow the city properly. You know, when I lived in Atlanta, what was funny is that it was never a city designed to be a big city. Right. And all of a sudden, you know, when I first moved there, the metropolitan area was just under 1 million. As of last year, the metropolitan area is over 5 million. And that's why you sit in traffic forever, right? Because it was never intended to be a big city. So cities like ours need to learn from that. And it's up to the leadership, no matter. And look, if you work for someone else and you manage people, you have leadership responsibilities. You may not have that name, but you have that responsibility. So if Ocala Inspired can help those managers within those corporations, or what I like to call entrepreneurs, be better at their job, then they're going to treat their employees better, and then the employees are going to treat your end user better, and the whole experience in our city and in your business improves.
Well, and you're going to be happier, right? Because you're fulfilled, because you're doing things that make you happy of your achievements and the time you're spending somewhere. You talked earlier about there's only a finite amount of time in a day, right? I tell my students all the time, time is my number one currency.
Yep.
Right? My time is my number one currency. Now, I'm not nearly as worried about dollars as I am about my time, right? If my time is not value added or valued, you know what? Keep your money, bro. I'm going somewhere else because I don't got time to waste, right? You know, it's funny. Right along that Atlanta conversation is I spent a lot of my military time overseas, so Japan and Guam. And there was not a lot of people that wanted to come visit us to bring us outside energy. So we had to find it inside our own communities to build up. But the other thing that I found out was when it went sideways on us, when we had an earthquake or a flood or some sort of natural disaster, we were the only ones that we had. And so we needed that community at those times to come together. And I learned as a leader of the community out there was the best way to prepare for those bad times was to find collaboration opportunities when it wasn't crisis for us to find ways to find success with each other. And then when a pandemic comes along and we've got to do a whole bunch of crazy things, I was able to get 12 Master Chiefs in the same room and say, all right, guys, here's what we got to do. And they had no problem working with me because we've been working together.
That's
right. I've been giving them opportunities to be successful, and that trust was there, right? And that's how that is my. I'd say if I had to pick a top reason, it was to build this trust in our community that prepares us for whatever may come our way. Because again, my worst case scenario mind, I'm a damage controlman at heart. I'm a Master Chief at heart. I'm a sailor. I'm a warfighter. I'm always worried for the power goes out and it never comes back again. What do we do? Right. And there you go. Right. You know, the last thing I got for today, and I really appreciate your time, you know, feeding into whoever watches this broadcast, is if you could give them, anybody watching this, you know, just a piece of advice to begin their journey, whether it's entrepreneurial, whether it's business, whether it's leadership, whether it's faith-based, or a couple pieces of advice, what would that be?
Top of the list would be never stop growing, right? There's a line from a song that says, the man that knows something knows that he knows nothing at all. Okay. Right. So the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. Right?
Yeah. Part.
So
that
never
part.
Stop growing. Never stop growing. Because what happens is if you assign to the concept of pleasing God and serving people, the more that I learn, the more that I can do. The more that I can do, the more that I can serve. The more that I can serve, the more that I can have. So in other words, if you want to have $1 million house, solve 10 million people's problems, right? You know, think about it that way, that it's about who you serve. And I ask my mentees before I take them on as a mentee, one question. If you died today, would anyone know that you were gone? You see, it's this life's about impact. So the reason why I'm always growing is so that I can now impact someone else, and I can impact. And it's not because I'm smarter than they are, as it is I've experienced something that I want to share with them. Right. So as I am acquiring knowledge, and we're not just talking about books. I'm just saying, every experience that you go through in life. And that's why I'm such a fan of journaling, because as you go through these experiences and you're writing them down, when you circle back, say 6 months from now, and you read it, it is so interesting to see your growth. Right. So I've been writing articles and newsletters and stuff for years. And so I was looking back through a folder of some things I've written in 2014, 2015. And it was funny because I totally disagreed with my point of view. like totally. I'm so not that guy. Right. But it's because I've grown. Right. I learned more. And as I experienced things, whether they went the way I wanted it to or did not, I take the time to figure out why it was. Why did it work? Or why didn't it work? Right. And each time I do that, then it goes into my knowledge base. And it's not for my own growth, as it is somewhere along the line, God's going to send somebody who needs that information. But you're the way that it has to be delivered. It's not that they can't go and find it in a book. It's that Gary Wise had to say that to them for them to hear it. Right. You've got kids like I've got kids. You've been in a room with them and you say something to them and they look at you, and your wife comes in and says the exact same thing. And you think it was manna from the sky. And you're sitting there going, didn't I just say that? Yeah. But it had to be her saying it for them to hear it. So we have to position ourselves to be used by growing. So as we continue to grow, then we can serve more people. And when we can serve more people, then the personal goals that we have will just the opportunities will begin to manifest. And then the last thing I'll say is that, especially when it comes to business and growth of revenue and opportunity, if you're not growing in your craft, opportunities will pass in front of you that you'll never recognize because you aren't on that level. So you don't see it. But then as you grow, more things come in front of you. You're like, hey, you know what? I think we could really benefit from that. And then you use it. Yeah. And I think, to me, I'm going to cap on that last one. And there's no such thing as always having a sure thing. That's right. Don't forget that 80% thought process. I tell my students all the time, if you wait until you're ready, you're never going to start. That's right. Go. Get moving. Find momentum. Let's win. Let's get some wins and losses. And then have a team of people around you that it's okay to fall back on and take a strategic pause and figure things out. Elgin, man, thank you so much for your time. It just shows everybody what I already know, which is that you are one of the lights in our community when it comes to this kinds of thought process. Everybody that listens to the sound of my voice, please come out and listen to Mr. Elgin talking Ocala Inspired. It's July 25th in the Ocala Community Center. Tickets are available on wiseleadershipsolutions.com. We're going to be serving up lunch that day. There's 6 other speakers. They're going to cover a lot of these strong leadership development things. But the most important thing is it's going to be in person, and you might get the opportunity to hear something that might change your life. You never know. And like Elgin was just saying, you got to look to put yourself in these positions to hear things that maybe God wants you to hear that day. And this is just an opportunity that we're trying to provide to you to come visit with us, to hopefully find value and enjoy some good food and build a community of people that are going to help guide Ocala as we grow, because we're going to grow regardless. So let's grow together instead of just growing in silos, right? Let's grow together instead. That's right. Elgin, man, I appreciate your time. I will publish this on LinkedIn. It's already going to be there. And then you'll see me put it up later on today on YouTube. I'll make sure I circle back and get your podcast in there and some other stuff, some other links for your LinkedIn or whatnot, so people can find you if they're looking for you. And yeah, man, I look forward to seeing you soon, man. Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right, brother. It was good talking to you, brother. All Bye, everybody. We're signing off. Bye. I know I was born for this. Don't care
for the critics, my words are like physics, a force that they can't stop. They just don't get it, I think they forget I'm not done till I'm on top. I know